I don't know what the fuck's going on. Okay, here we go.
You know what the fuck's going on. You're good.
I know it's fucking going on, man. I got this, man. I don't care what you motherfuckers think. All right? All right? Okay?
That would have been a good way to start out.
All right, here we go. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. That's Marcus Aurelius writing to us from like 170 AD, and somehow it's still more accurate description of most men's lives today. Here's a question nobody's asking out loud. When was the last time you made a decision at work, at home, with your kids, with a woman that was completely free of what someone else might think? So hey guys, welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness. I'm Will Schneider alongside John Macaskill, and we have a special guest today, Andy Riise, right? And the three of us are going to go deep on the most quietly destructive pattern in men's lives and all people's lives, the approval trap. So by the end of this conversation, you're going to know exactly what fear of negative evaluation is, where it's silently costing you, the ghosts that are haunting Andy in his head. And by the end, we're going to lay down a few concrete things, right, that you can do like right now during this week to start breaking free from this inner destructive force.
Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
Welcome, guys. And just so you know, Andy's from the Army, John's from the Navy.
Yep.
They got this thing going on, but it's really all just love. I've experienced many times. So I'm just going to put that out there. It's probably some sort of approval thing.
I don't give a shit what John thinks. That's
exactly. There it is.
Well, he obviously does care because he's wearing his West Point shirt to rub it in my face for some reason.
Yeah.
But to me, that shirt was a complete waste of money. So
I got this from you.
Yeah, did you?
You gifted
No.
this. You gifted this to me.
Well,
along with that loss, man. I freaking back in December, man. Two in a row.
That's right.
Damn.
And I actually had a dream about that last night. I don't know why, but anyway, let me get back on track. Let me get focused. And speaking about focus, hey, check out our new company, Will's and my new company, Focus Now Training. We created this company to help leaders and teams just kind of ditch the distractions and then build their attention in their teams, build resilience, emotional control. And that's, in today's day and age, we're all distracted quite often. And this is something that's going to help you to build a better team, safer team, more productive, better performing team. So check us out at focusnowtraining.com. And if this episode piques your curiosity, your interest, and you want to learn more, we listed some supporting episodes from our library in the show notes. So check that out. And now that said, for those of you who have never joined our show, welcome. For those of you who have, welcome as well. And we're just going to start out with one breath grounding practice. And all that looks like is this. Go ahead and close your eyes if that's available to you. Otherwise, keep them open. And let's just begin with a very focused exhale. Letting that breath go, paying attention to what you're feeling, holding empty for a second, and then a nice long, slow, deep breath in all the way up, holding full at the top, and letting that go, letting that go, letting that go. All right. So Will, Andy, and I were talking before the show, and I'm not sure. I think the name goes away, but Will Schneider has his name. John Macaskill, I have my name.
Yeah.
And then underneath Andy Riise, it says Navy sucks. So that's probably not going to be there in the post-production, but just wanted to put that.
It should. That's my middle name. I just changed it on my driver.
It just changed. It's like
Andy Navy sucks.
Gotta stay on brand, man. No, Riise. Or Riise or whatever. Hey, just don't call me late for dinner, man. So it's all good.
Well, all right. Well, let's just dive into this. So it's like, how do we stop caring about what other people think? Well, I think we need to kind of lay the groundwork to see what this all looks like. And I think one of the first key points that, as I was doing this research, that really hit home is this is not just, some kind of thought in our head, or it's just something that is like conditioned into us. It's actually evolutionary. It's actually biological, and it's wired into us, and it's not a weakness. And what this looks like is this is just fascinating. The brain literally cannot tell the difference, right, between social rejection and physical pain. Just think about that for a moment, right? Your body thinks being dismissed in a meeting or however you've been rejected in your life is the same as getting punched, right? And this comes back down to like, we are biologically safe, right? And we're able to thrive when we're part of a tribe. So that's one thing to think about. And I mentioned this in the next piece in the intro. What we're dealing with here is a psychological term called fear of negative evaluation, FNE, right? And it's also a key thing here is like, it's one of the most studied psychological patterns in clinical research, like fascinating, right? So we're all dealing with this in some form or fashion. And it's always running in the background in most people's lives, definitely, most men's lives, whether you know it or not. And what this also kind of one way that kind of begins to manifest is like something called the spotlight effect. And this is also interesting as well. So people, right? I know I do, right? And I'm sure definitely you, Mr. Riise, does. I mean, absolutely, right? And John, for sure, right? You have something called the spotlight effect, right? So we actually overestimate how much people notice us, right? It's actually roughly double. Right. Cornell did a research and it shows that 50% of the room, it shows that people thought 50% of the room noticed something about them, right? Whether you're wearing a particular shirt or whatever, you have your fly down or something like that, whatever. When in actuality, right, it's only 25%.
Or less.
So so the audience we're performing for, is half as big as we actually think in our head. So, I mean, this is like a psychological phenomenon, but it also has deep biological wiring. And we're too busy. Most people are too busy worrying about, what they think. And they're probably thinking the same thing. It's like, oh my God, how people are receiving me. And another thing I think is worth talking about as well, instead of fear of negative evaluation, we also have fear of positive evaluation. So it shows up, right? And nobody talks about this enough, I think, that we're kind of scared of standing out and stepping up, right? And being criticized for that. This is kind of comes back to the fear of success phenomenon or fear being praised and, fear of being visible. So, gentlemen, what's coming up for you as I kind of read the baseline here of what we're talking about today?
Yeah, that was a pretty in-depth start, man. So
Yeah.
Just hit us with a drop some knowledge on us, man.
knowledge bombs.
Well,
Dude,
so how about this? This is a big easy question, right? So let's go into the somatic, right? We're understanding what that word means, our community, right? So it's just like, what is the actual feeling, the physical feeling on the inside when we are rejected or disapproved of? Like, you guys have any kind of experience with that or
I'll jump in there and getting into the somatic here in a second, but I kind of want to lay some foundation is that a lot of guys, men, I mean, people in general,
right.
treat this fear of negative evaluation that you mentioned before, and even the fear of positive evaluation. They treat this like the fact that they have this fear like a character flaw, like something's wrong with them, and it's really much simpler than that. If you go back to most of human history, getting pushed out of these groups back in the ancient cavemen and women times. I mean, all the way until really, I guess, until the Industrial Revolution, that meant losing food. It meant losing protection.
Yeah.
And it meant losing your place in the hierarchy, the world. And so your nervous system still reads this social rejection as danger. And like you said, Will, studies have found that this social rejection and physical pain can activate the same circuits in the brain. It can literally feel like you got punched. Actually, I would say it feels worse, right? That old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, is total BS. I think words hurt way worse. So coming to the somatic piece, when you feel brushed off or blown off in a meeting or judged by your peers, your body responds like there is a threat nearby, and that looks like maybe having a really tight chest, You know, I knew that when we had Andy coming on this show, I had a really tight chest. There was a drop in my stomach. my breathing got faster.
Well, it's because
'Cause
you had to put a shirt on. Yeah, I mean, that's why it's like, you're used to walking around with your washboard abs,
Well,
peacocking
man,
around.
I wish. So anyway, like I just think that you know, yes, a lot of men are scared of failure, or they're actually not scared of failure. They're scared of what looking like a failure looks like in public. They're scared of the idea of failing in public,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
I'll
Yeah.
shut up now and let Andy speak.
No,
man.
that's
Yeah.
that's a really great point. I want to double down on it. It's not about the fear of being rejected or fear of the failure. It's the fail of the what you see as the perspective of the results of a failure reflecting on who you are as a person, right? And your reputation, and especially on your character, so on and so forth, right? So it's also really interesting. Like, again, I want to riff off our brain is designed to conserve calories, right? And it has that built-in watchdog that's designed. Our brain's designed to conserve calories, designed to help us survive.
Right.
It's not, and we're resilient by nature, but it's not designed to help us like get out of our comfort zone and to thrive, right? So, so if we have this built-in watchdog that perceives threats, it tends to be like, the dog that you have that barks at the UPS guy, and all the old people walking by, and treats them the same as it probably would a robber, or maybe it's going to be sleeping when the robber actually comes in. So your inner watchdog you have, which is through your sympathetic nervous system that controls the fight or flight, is very sensitive, is very overreactive, and your brain's designed to conserve calories. So when there's a hesitancy to like put yourself out there, and because you don't want to, it's easy for you to be conservative rather than to be able to try, and because you're worried about failure, but really about the perception of other people are going to be able to have for you. And I think that it's also one of those things where where we are in our lifespan also kind of helps drive this, because we're also a product not only of our DNA, our birthright, product of our environment, and how we are as social beings. To your point too, and then so I've got teenage kids, so this is such a great example of this too, because from experience what it's like to be in middle school. Can we just admit that middle school is like the worst freaking age
Oh,
that like
fucking
human
worse.
So
development?
awkward.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the worst. They're going through puberty. It's this weird social experiment, and then all of a sudden, where they're at their lifespan development, all of a sudden they become socially aware of how they see others, and that makes them hyper aware of how they think other people see them. Right? This is kind of like a Johari's window type of thing too. And I deal this a lot with more of my daughter than probably more of my son. So girls become hyper aware about their image and how they are projecting this image to be accepted. And you think about it, even we did this in our generation too. I mean, you're going to go to radical lengths to be able to look just like everyone else, because that is an extension of who you are to be accepted within the in group, right? And you think that other people actually really give a crap, like you said, about what you're wearing, what you're doing, what you're not doing. But the reality is especially at that age, they're way more. So you said 25% read the room. I'd be willing.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to look at middle schoolers, kids in that age between 6th and 8th grade, because I bet you it would be an even lower percentage. But here's the interesting thing. From a point of experience, as you get older, you stop giving a shit less about what people think about you. That's why old people just say whatever the hell they want, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, just take
Yeah.
the freaking filter off. I mean, John's pretty much like 90 years old, freaking, and when it comes to
Well, I mean, it's
coming
funny. It's
unhinged,
like,
right? He
well,
just says whatever the hell he wants on social media. It goes off in his McRant. He's
Yeah,
just
it's
no, I'm
funny.
joking.
It's funny from like age like like 9 or maybe like 8 to fucking 80, we give a fuck. But then from like before age, like little kids, like they just say whatever's on their mind.
Yeah, kids say it's funny. And so the other thing too, I just want to hit on too, is that our imagination also kind of is the way it's designed also makes things, bigger than they actually are, right? That makes things worse than they actually are, because again, our brain is projecting images that our brain doesn't understand between what's imagined and what's real. So we create scenarios in our own mind that aren't even real, but in our experience, our consciousness, it is real. So our imagination, when I teach imagery, it can both hurt you and help you, right? So you got to use that as a tool, because if you're not projecting the right things, it could actually be worse for you, prevent you from doing things, but also really hurt you in terms of how you hyperanalyze things when you make a mistake or misstep or whatever. So it's just kind of interesting kind of how we're designed to really have this, to be conditioned with this phenomena that you talked about. And it really impacts, everything that we do, how we think, how we act or react, how we, in our relationships that we have.
100%. Like, and we, just to get like, real about it. Like we talked about being fired, in the green room. Right. And I remember, I got fired from a bunch of jobs. Right. And every single time, like, there was just fucking gut punch, even though like, I was kind of blowing it off in the moment, but like, oh, okay, whatever, I'll move on. But there was definitely, and I think actually it's funny, as I got older, when I first moved to New York, which was very challenging for me because I didn't, I was doing my own thing as an actor, like out there working restaurants, like making like, it just like completely alternative from what like I was wired with for safety, coming from my, my roots of just like, just get a job and, buy a house, find a girl, have some kids, retire in 25 years and then start living. Like I went completely opposite direction. So when I first moved to New York, I was working at this particular restaurant and like it didn't work out after like 6, 7, 8 weeks, and they fired me. You know what I mean? And I remember sitting in this meeting with them and like actually, I was starting to defend myself. I was getting angry. I remember dropping the F-bomb. They're like, "Oh, yo, you don't got to curse." I'm like, whatever, and but it's just like there's this visceral reaction. I was getting kicked out of the tribe. And it's very real. I mean, and again, there's so many like moments in my life that I've definitely felt that, or you just like, even someone might disagree with your idea in a meeting or something like that, or disagree with you at all. I'm like, oh shit, like did I do something wrong? Like, is everyone else gonna think I'm an idiot or something like that? You know what I mean? Like it's just so that it really speaks to that deep wiring that we have around this. Again, it's like it really comes down to that core element of like being part of a tribe in order to survive. So
being rejected, the fear of rejection, right?
The fear of rejection is really big.
Fear of rejection is a big one as well too. And I think another one that I see is pretty common with me, is fear of failure. You mentioned too, so we can maybe riff on that too. But I think fear of other people who don't believe the same things I do is a big one that I'm seeing right now too.
So what was that? So fear of people who don't believe the same thing?
Fear of other people who are not like me, like kind of in general terms. But really what it is, it's a fear of other people who have different beliefs and worldviews that I do too. Right?
Oh, interesting.
And it's that's another really interesting thing too, because it's based on kind of how we're conditioned, right? Because human beings, we're social. We tend to we gravitate towards people who look like us and are like us, right? And have our same opinions. So again, it's counter, because we want to be included. It's counterintuitive to go, engage with people who are not like us. And I'll never forget when I went to, maybe you experienced this too, John. We both are from kind of smaller towns. So just like, let's say, I'll take it from we'll stay away from politics and religion, but there's implications to that, right? But just from like a social experiment standpoint too. So I grew up like a real small town, Central California. The demographic was like very agricultural, ranchers, farmers. We had a rodeo there. I don't claim that I'm a cowboy. John does claim he's a cowboy. Anyways, I digress. So I go to the prep school 3,000 miles away, right? And, obviously the academies that we went to are both a kind of a microcosm of society, right? People from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, creed, colors, religions, so on and so forth. And I remember the first time I went to the mess hall, like at the prep school, there's only 220 of us. It just was super interesting to me, especially I was identifying my football teammates early on. And it was like, they all kind of like, you imagine the big cafeteria, and everybody who looked alike, was sitting by each other, right? Which I thought was fascinating. So there weren't a lot of African-American people that grew up in my area. It's very predominantly white, lower middle class, a lot of Hispanics, obviously because of migrant workers, so on and so forth, our proximity to Mexico, right? And that was the predominant thing too, right? So it wasn't something that I had any bias towards. It just was something that I noticed, right? So you have freaking all my teammates, so all the African American guys who were from like the South were sitting together. All the guys that played lacrosse from New York and Boston, they were sitting together. All the middle class guys from the West Coast were white guys sitting together. The Asian folks were sitting together. It was kind of like we naturally. It's almost like we go to Hogwarts and we sort ourselves, right? We tend to sort ourselves. So I mean, and so I remember, and this wasn't something this is how I am, as you guys know, and I'll never forget, so I fell into that pattern early on. Well,
Mm.
as you start to get a routine, like I started to go like, well, screw this. I'm going to go sit with freaking the African American guys,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and try
yeah.
and feel like but it was uncomfortable at first, right? And I remember saying like, hey, are these guys going to accept me, right? But you having to get past that, I in my mind I thought that even though I see these guys every day, I play football with them, I'm cordial with them. The idea that I was going to go sit down with them and have a conversation with them, I had a little bit of anxiety about it. And I think that's because that fear and our fear and our excitement are on the same wavelength neurologically, right? They're just on different spectrums, right? And so what station are you tuning into in terms of that
Mm.
frequency in terms of, and you have a choice in terms of how you see that to really lean into that, right? Because if you look at the fear response, you're going to retract into your own position. And
Right, right.
again, like, and you think, and so let's extrapolate that in a world of social media where we interact with the world that's curated to us. Like you can like and dislike stuff, and actually like almost kind of subconsciously curate this world you're in this bubble with all you're around is people of things that you like, people you're aligned with that believe in the same things you are, people that either look like you or you want to look like. And
Yeah.
so it creates this world that really expands on what our nervous system wants versus what's best for our development and growth. I'm just kind of curious, like, hey, how do you, this polarization that we're in right now too? How do you lean into differences and to trying to seek to understand versus retracting on your
I think
beliefs? Yeah.
what you just stated there, I think, is seeking to understand really comes from listening. Instead of always trying to like express your beliefs or express your opinions or, try to, one of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit here is like trying to control the conversation because it's actually like you go in the opposite direction, or it's actually used as a tool because you're afraid of that negative valuation. So you
Yeah.
begin to control the conversation in order to just, feel better about yourself and
Right.
maybe trying to gather acceptance from other people by leading the conversation. So
Yep.
like I tend to listen, and I learn a lot from listening. And the one way that I think I stay connected to the group and continually be valuable to the group is I really try to ask good questions. That's
Curiosity.
it.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Lead with
I
curiosity.
just,
Yeah.
that's it, and it's
Yeah.
like,
Ask
I
questions.
mean,
Yeah.
also like I'm 53 now, I mean, you guys are in your 40s, you know what I mean? And we're getting to that point, where it's just like, we understand what it's like to have more life experience. And
Right.
because we've been in different social groups,
Right.
many different social groups because of the experience that we put, forth throughout our lifetime. And, I get a lot further with anybody, and any group of people by being curious, like you, John, said, and just sitting and listening and being grounded and not making it about me.
Yeah.
I mean, when I have an opinion, I'm going to speak. Of course, the attention comes my way,
Yeah.
but I'm also just, but I think our values are super fucking important here too.
Yeah.
I'm just
Great point.
trying to,
Right.
be more kind, be more grounded, be a force of peace, and I'm hearing stuff that might be, very aggressive or something that could be very abrasive. It's just like I'm filtering it through that value system.
Right.
So whatever's going to come next is going to be filtered through these values instead
Yeah.
of it, living in a reactionary kind of way
Yeah.
that, that can just create more friction. And you're trying to live into what we're talking about here, really caring what people think. So
Yeah.
I don't think we need to flex as much, be so macho, as a lot of men might think, but I think
Well, I
and
think,
then we're gonna, yeah, go ahead, John. I,
where Andy was talking about going and sitting with a different quote unquote tribe, right?
yeah, that's a great way to develop skill too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's I hate to admit this, Andy, but that's actually
Smart.
a damn macho move. Like
Oh, fucking
like
ballsy as
manning up
fuck.
and
Yeah.
and going and sitting with people who not only don't look like you, but maybe
Yeah.
come from different backgrounds.
Exactly.
Maybe they do have different political beliefs and
Right.
different religious beliefs, and asking them questions, right? And
Yeah.
and really coming back to that ultimately a macho thing to do. You're doing something that's scary, and you're doing it anyway. It's the
Right.
moment that you stop kind of trying to impress the room, or
Yeah,
the
no
moment that
shit.
you're not scared of what people
Mm.
think. That usually that's when you find your freedom.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's when you become kind of the most interesting person in that room.
Yes.
So I love that you did that, man. I will applaud you, and that'll be the only time I ever applaud you.
I was a dumb 17-year-old kid just trying to be a little bit of a jackass, be a smart ass. You know what I mean?
Well,
You
I
know?
mean, it's a smart kid. I
Yeah.
had we're gonna move on in a second here, but what I will say is, like, I had a boss a long time ago, or I heard when I did work corporate for 6 years, if you
Yeah.
want to really be successful, go sit with and eat with a different person at lunch every day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
that's
because it's not only, you're gonna get into those conversations,
right.
but you're gonna be better at being within those conversations.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like understanding that, I think it's like, especially when we come from small towns like we all three of us do, we get kind of locked in this belief system. This is the way the world is, where the
Yeah.
world is fucking vast and
That's right.
like many different opinions, many
Right.
different customs, many
Yeah.
different ways that people do things. And you know what? That's okay. And if
Yeah.
you're trying to push everybody into how your worldview, you're going to be completely miserable and you're going to be naturally thrown out of the fucking tribe because, like, who wants to like be with somebody that's continually abrasive or
Yep.
continually evaluating you based on their one ignorant view of how the world should be? I
Yep.
mean, that just doesn't,
Well,
I don't know. Yeah.
I want to hit on something you mentioned there, that the fact that we're all three from small towns.
Yeah.
When the population is smaller, I think there is, honestly, and I'm just guessing at this, but I think there is more of that spotlight on you.
Yeah.
You feel it
Yeah.
more, but it truly is
do.
there because there's fewer
Right.
people to put the spotlight on. I mean, shit.
Exactly.
Like
There's fewer
what,
spotlights.
a week
right?
and a half ago, Will, I was in New York City, and there's people walking around
8.5
that
million.
just do not give
You can't.
F, right?
You
No,
can't.
don't.
There's just
You can't.
there's too many spotlights. Like
Yeah,
there's
that's
no way
right.
you are in
You're
somebody else's spotlight,
desensitized. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's very
so
empowering.
coming from a small town, you may have more of that spotlight effect,
Yeah.
or like feeling on you, but then when you look
Right.
around, you see that nobody gives an F.
Yeah.
And speaking about not giving an F, one of the reasons that we have Andy here is I recently saw a post of his on LinkedIn about Alyssa Liu. And it really, if you want to see the opposite of approval seeking, watch athletes who look loose under pressure.
Yeah.
They don't
Right.
lose
Yeah.
under pressure, but they look loose. And Alyssa Liu's world title, gold medal run, that's a great example of that. People
Right.
described her attitude going in as almost laissez-faire, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not careless, but just not gripping the outcome. And people were like, well, what do you feel about Olympic pressure?
Right.
And a former guest on here, Apollo Ono, he also posted about that. If you don't know who Apollo Ono is, he's a former, well, not a former, he is an Olympic
Gold medalist.
speed
Yeah.
skater, was at one point, and maybe still is, the most the winningest winter Olympian in history, U.S. So anyway, coming back to Alyssa Liu, she wasn't skating to prove anything.
Yeah.
She was just skating because she likes skiing.
Right.
And when you're not obsessed with that judgment, you
Right.
move differently,
Yeah,
right?
you're free.
We talked about the somatics in your body, right? You tighten up, your breath starts increasing, your respiratory rate, your heart
Right.
starts beating faster. But
Right.
if you relax, you're going to breathe differently. You're going to take those
Yeah.
risks. So I just want to touch on that and get Andy's thoughts on that example.
Yeah. Mhm.
No, I definitely want to hit on that too. There's one I just want to touch on thing too, because I think there's art and science to asking questions, and this comes from my counseling background, and motivational interviewing is something that I wish that I knew about when I was an Army officer. Are you guys familiar with this motivational interviewing?
No, I don't know.
Yeah,
that term.
it's so this is an awesome skill set too. So I'm glad you guys haven't talked about it yet too. Yeah, so in the counseling world, especially in psychology, obviously the art and science of asking really good questions is a part of our skill set, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a non-clinical psychology practitioner. So I'm a mental performance coach to be able to do that. But I still spend a lot of time doing athletic counseling with athletes that perform at the highest level right now in the NFL. So one of the things that we teach is this motivational interviewing. And so the acronym is OARS, and anybody can practice motivational interviewing if you want some more reasons too. So OARS is a little too Navy for me, but like we're just going to go with it. Right? So O is asking open-ended questions. So you want to ask, hey, who, what, when, why, where. You don't want to ask questions that lead to a no or a yes. So open-ended questions is the O. A is affirmations, right? So you want to be able to then affirm what they're saying. Everybody, a human need is everybody wants to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be validated, 100%. Right? So you want to affirm what they're saying, and then you want to use reflective listening. So through active listening techniques, you're leaning in, so on and so forth. And then you paraphrase back to what you're saying. What I'm hearing is this, so on and so forth. And then S is like summarizing things as well too. So ORS is an easy skill based on motivational interviewing. There's a lot of science behind it. Is a way that anybody can enter any conversation with curiosity. And if you want to influence people, especially if you're a leader or aspiring leader, this is a great way to be able to help change behaviors, right? Is through motivational interviewing. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts
Right.
on that? And we can maybe riff on Alyssa.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, that's the first I've heard that acronym, or that term, the motivational interview. I think that's great. Coming out of a conversation like that, I would definitely feel better about myself and my feelings about a particular issue, challenge, obstacle in my life, and my ability to take that on. So yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
You know,
Can we discuss the Alyssa
yeah.
Lou, since we went into that real quick? And
I mean,
Andy's,
I think like what I hear about that, it's like you're right. Like the less we just talked about it many times, the less you give a fuck, right?
Yeah.
But I mean,
but how do you get to that, right? I guess that's
I
where
think.
we'll
Well, I think it's like
go at
it's
the end.
preparation. I mean, a lot of preparation, a lot of reps, a lot of reps, a lot of reps, a lot of reps, and then it's like we just had Mark Divine on the show. Visualization, knowing that you're going to succeed because you've seen it again and again. You've not just seen it, you've felt it, you've experienced it in your mind. I think is I mean, Andy, you're like the coach of, the mental coach of the Chicago Bears. I'm sure that you're helping them, get on the inside by visualizing it and grounding themselves into the possibility instead of being like trying to, coach them into like, hey, don't screw up. Like it's a totally different way, right? Totally, but that's what happens to some people. When you get nervous and you're gripping, like you said, John, right? Like it grips our mind, it grips our experience, and when we go into that experience, we're gripping, we're holding, instead of being, what is flow state, right? What is flow state, right? I mean, selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness, right? Is how it's defined with Stephen Kotler. And when we're in that state, it's just like everything is all clicking, man.
So how do you get replicate elements of the zone? So let's go back to the Alyssa Lou thing. So really interesting. If you weren't familiar with her, she was a phenom skater. She's from Oakland, California, not too far from where I'm from, and she, at a meteoric rise. If you're familiar with figure skating, they start them really young. A lot of times they're away from home. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that. Early mornings, late nights. She lived that life. It becomes a full-time job. It consumes your identity, who you are. Then all of a sudden she's 16 years old and she's burnt out, which is a very unfortunately common thing in youth sports now, especially in the age of specialization, where she just wasn't happy and she wasn't enjoying skating anymore like she did when she first started, because now she's going up levels, the expectations and so on and so forth. So she quit. So she famously quit ice skating. She took 2 years off, which is like unheard of. She goes back to UCLA. She goes back to school, has friends, has a regular college life. And then she's just out, as the story goes, she's but maybe she was like on a vacation somewhere in Europe. And then she just happened to, somewhere that happened to have, it was the winter time. There happened to be an ice skating rink, and she just throws the ice skates on and goes out and has fun. And then realizes in that moment, I miss this feeling. It comes back to her saying, I miss this, and decides to call her coaches when she gets back home and says, hey, I want to come back. And to their shock, they're like, hell no. Like, we don't recommend it, right? And so she has, like, as my kids say, has become like the poster file for Gen Z, because she's like, no, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it my way. One, I'm gonna eat what I want to do. I'm only gonna skate because I have fun. I'm gonna take breaks. And my purpose, like going back to you're talking about, I think her value system in terms of what was important, her values in terms why it was. I want to do this because I love skating. That shapes your beliefs system in terms of your ability, and also it shapes your purpose, and that's part of your identity. So I think fundamentally some things, she reevaluated her foundation as an athlete, and then her approach was now affected by what she did and didn't do. So now she wasn't skating to meet expectations and appraisal and approval in terms of achievement and the results and everything like that too, which gets magnified, by the way, on the Olympic stage. And any Olympian you've ever talked to, it's like you can't really prepare. If your first time going to the Olympics is like, I don't care what you say, it's like the Super Bowl, right? The Super Bowl is a different animal than another playoff game or a regular football game. The Olympics is different than the World Championship, because all the world's eyes are on you, and you feel that because your nervous system is designed to do that. But what's interesting to your point about the training is that she focused on having that present moment focus. She focused on the love of skating. And that drove everything that she did. And what's interesting is that she had what I call the next play mindset, and so it was always focusing on, as she has her plan, as she's seen herself perform. When you hear some of the interviews, she visualized not only herself succeeding, she saw herself having fun on the ice. She didn't visualize herself being on the podium and getting all the accolades and all the things to win it. So what she saw and chose her attention and put her energy towards, then her body followed. And then the way she trained was, again, all about doing it. As you have that routine, there are certain elements that they break it up, and you're just focusing on the next thing and then the next thing and then the next thing. And that's the essence of mindfulness. But you have to train your mind and your body to follow that. And I think that's what you get, right? And is the result, right? The opposite side of that was, if you saw, I'm going to mispronounce the name, the gentleman who spoke the quad god, right? Who was supposed to, this incredible talent, who again is young, in terms of a competitor, who was expected to win the gold. And then when he was in the moment, he made a mistake. He started thinking about the consequences and the expectations instead of the next element of his routine. And that ultimately led to him making more compounding mistakes. An active mind leads to a tight body. And then you get what's called choking. And I think a lot of the world reacted to this idea of choking, but that's a part of human nature, is to have those failures in the moment, right? And I'm excited to see how he bounces back, because I think that could end up being the best thing that happened to him. But at least, Alyssa Liu wouldn't have had the gold medal had she not quit. And in our society, quitting is a bad thing, right? But the reality is, if you're a high performer, it's not how hard you work, it's how you dominate recovery and how strong your purpose is that really can drive consistent high performance. I think she's just a great example of that.
Hey everyone, if you're serious about leading with more clarity, more focus, and more resilience under pressure, we want to invite you into something we're building. We recently launched a new training company called Focus Now Training, and it's built around a simple idea that attention is your most valuable performance asset. And like any asset, it can be trained. As part of that, we created a weekly newsletter called Your Thursday 3 Things. It used to be the Frogman Mindfulness newsletter. That has transitioned into the Focus Now Training newsletter, and it is specifically Your Thursday 3 Things, where every Thursday we send 3 carefully chosen practical takeaways connected to that week's Men Talking Mindfulness episode. So sometimes it's going to be a mindset shift, sometimes it's a tool, sometimes it's a resource, a reflection question, or something you can experiment with immediately. And the goal is simple: give you 3 things you can actually use that week. There's a free version you can subscribe to right away, and if you want to go deeper, there's a paid version with expanded tools, resources, and training insights beyond the paywall. And you can sign up at newsletter.focusnowtraining.com, and we'll also put the link in the episode description. Or the easiest way is just to text MTM, the letters MTM, to 33777, and we'll send the link straight to you. Because focus isn't accidental, it's trained. And that is exactly why we built Focus Now Training. So check that out. We appreciate you listening, and let's carry on with the show.
Yeah. Well, purpose is something that I found in literature. It's like, if you are connected to a purpose, right, instead of just going about something that you don't enjoy, right, that kind of drives you forward. And when you have purpose, like, you're gonna get results that aren't gonna that the failure is necessary in order to succeed, right? And in order to access more of that purpose and keep moving forward on your path, like, you have to try some hard shit. You have to do something that is going to hopefully make a big difference in whatever you're trying to accomplish. And if you're not processing failure in order to lead to more success, right, but also learning how to understand, like, the emotional aspect of the failure, but then getting tactical about what was failure, right, that's what's going to help you to succeed. So it's really important to put yourself into some sort of regular kind of crucible that really challenges you physically, mentally, and emotionally, because then you can really begin to see yourself as your full humanity, instead of just being like, I got to check this box. Instead of just being of your fucking mind. Which is just not, like, that's just not how we live our life. We're prescribed that because it's very easy, and we're also subscribed that typically by people that have lived a life of checking boxes. Whereas like if you talk to people or work with people that have really experienced and built themselves from the ground up, or like really accessed and lived with courage, right? Like you're talking to a different human being,
Yeah.
because that's the true road, I feel, to long, like, and lasting success,
Yeah.
right? Because
I
it's really
agree.
not about the results so much as it's just about like, am I living my purpose, and am I
Yeah.
finding more of who I am, living this purpose, but also unleash that purpose. I must let go. I must have that freedom,
Gotta let
right,
go,
that we're
right?
talking about here.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
Yeah,
think,
completely.
go
um,
ahead, Joe.
so Will, you said in there, what is failure? And I think so many of us
Yeah.
define failure as small mistakes, right? Like here's actually a couple perfect examples. I was telling you, Will, before we started, that my kids are starting to do some other sports. They've been runners and played soccer before, but my 9-year-old daughter is starting lacrosse. My little boy is starting baseball. And when we told our little boy yesterday that we had signed him up for baseball, he had a breakdown, like he was crying. And I was like, what's up, buddy? He's like, but what if I'm not good at it? I
Mm,
was like, well, sorry,
who
buddy. I
cares?
mean, one, yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
And then two, how would you know if you're good or not if you don't play? Or how are you going to
Yep.
become good? Is
Yeah.
you've gotta get out there and take a risk and play.
Right.
And
Mm,
I experienced the same thing with me and snow skiing. I didn't start skiing until I was like 32. And the whole reason it took me that long was like I didn't want to look like an idiot on the snow.
yeah,
It was
great point.
the perception of failing,
Yeah.
right? If there was a way for me to get into a ski simulator and learn and nobody ever see me failing, then I would have done that. But
Yeah.
eventually
Right.
there you have to get out
Yeah.
there and take a risk. And initially is, okay, well, what is failure? Well, for my son in baseball, it's probably like not hitting a home run
Yeah.
Right.
or striking
Right.
out. For
Right.
me, it was falling down when I come off the ski lift, like, oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing. I don't want to do that.
Right.
But
Right.
then nobody gives a shit, right? Coming back to that
Yeah.
Yeah.
spotlight,
Again,
like,
yeah, the
yeah,
spotlight. Yeah,
Yeah, I was
very
gonna say,
true.
John. Well, I mean, if I was, I hope I was. Wish I was there when you were saying about looking like
Yeah.
an idiot, because I would have told you look like an idiot regardless. So
Yeah.
touche,
I'm just
exactly.
Right.
So
I'm just throwing
just
that out there.
yeah,
Just to
Yeah.
make you feel better about
Uh,
yourself.
well, I
But so I was gonna say, but what I teach athletes about, like, if you guys ever read that book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a
oh
Fuck.
yeah,
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 yeah.
Yeah, great book. So it's a little bit of a reframe to even the title of this thing too. It's not about not caring. It's about making decisions and choices about what you care
what to care
about.
about,
Right. That's the
yeah,
key thing. So it wasn't
Right.
that Alyssa Liu didn't care. It's just she treated her,
Yeah.
her cares like she like you're investing in human capital, right? So she gave her having fun, right? So I look at like M&Ms, like so it's like, hey,
I
I got all
love
these
him.
cares in my jar of M&Ms, and I'm a fat kid, so I hoard as many
oh man,
M&Ms
M&Ms,
as I want, right? So I'm very protective of what my cares, which are each M&M, right? So like, hey, how many I want to share what I care about, right? But I don't want to like just give away all my cares, right? Because John will steal all my cares like while I'm looking, I'm not looking.
Yeah.
So what's
Yeah.
my so
I'll
what
steal
my
them while
it's,
you're looking too.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you sure will,
Well,
you
let's
bastard. So but I think just real
go
quick,
ahead.
I just want to say
Yeah.
too that for kids especially, there's two types of whys, right? There's a little y and big y. So
Yeah,
for kids up to a certain age, like your kid, they don't have a concept of existential bigger whys that we know as purpose and
Yeah,
the
that's
related things
true.
like ikigai, but they do
yeah,
understand micro whys, like why am I gonna, why am I why do I have to go to bed early, right? Why do I have to brush my teeth? Why do I have to make my bed when I'm just gonna sleep in it the next day, right? So they understand those things, but as parents, we extrapolate existential big whys that are associated with purpose and the bigger picture on them. And so like I think it's a recipe for burnout, right? I mean, when
Yeah.
your kid's 10 years old and you're like, hey, you're all about helping them become a professional athlete, and you're just doing travel ball because you think they love it, then they wake up one day and then they hate it, and they don't ever want to play it again because you're extrapolating your big why on their little why, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very common problem that I see in youth athletes that we got to be really careful about to not taking our adult brains and protracting them and overlaying them on our little kid brains. And I think that's why going back to the Olympics, why our Scandinavian sports are so successful. Because in Norway, where my family's from, the reason they're so successful is because the way they treat sports is all about having fun and experimenting and being with your friends. The way
Yeah,
things
that's a
used to
great
be,
point.
it's not about competing, working harder, and getting more medals. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
cultural difference shapes, a lot of expectations when it comes
yeah,
to the relationship with fear and expectations. So it's something for us to be cautious about as we move forward.
yeah. And I feel like I'll just one last comment on that, and then we're gonna go into what this actually looks like on the day to day when we're
Yeah.
concerned about what people think. Is like I feel in America we're always and well now we're playing for social media. I feel like, oh, let's get that highlight reel. I want to have a great clip or whatever
Yeah,
content,
right.
right? Also, but when we were growing up, it's all about like getting on the ESPN highlights or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And that's really and it
Da-da-da,
is, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Think about that. Think
Sports
about
Center,
that, right?
baby.
Sports Center, I know it was real, but like we mentioned a lot of good things here about fear of rejection, fear of failure, being
Yeah.
embarrassed kind of thing. And all those, again, they're all emotions, right? They're all things that come from the
Yeah.
inside out. So I think that's really
Right.
important to be aware of the intrinsic, right? That
Yeah.
that is attached to all of this, right? That actually kind of leads to that thinking, right? So, so let's look at like what this looks like in our daily lives as far as like, so I'm going to just read through some things here. And there's a big question I have, the big point at the end that I want us all to kind of talk about or just kind of add to and speak from our experience. But this is what, fear of what people care about, fear of
Fear.
negative evaluation, right?
Yeah.
So at work, it can show up as you can't say no, overcommitting,
Right.
easily to burnout,
Yeah.
building a quiet resentment, which also builds quiet
Yeah.
resentment, right?
Speaking up,
Also,
speaking
yeah,
speaking up.
exactly. Yeah, it's all in here,
Yep.
right? So without real opinions, right? So withholding real opinions, right? Speaking up, right? So fading into the background, being seen as agreeable, not
Yeah.
capable, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, how God destructive is that for not just you but your team, right?
Yeah. Fear of feedback.
Yeah, all that stuff, right? Another one is uh doing work to get praised, not because it matters, right? Just putting in fucking, oh, I worked 17 hours today, like, and you didn't do, like, you basically essentially did nothing, and that's also feeds to that validation loop that actually blocks promotions and stuff like that. In relationships, right? This is really interesting as well. Constant reassurance seeking. So in your any relationship, especially your most
Confirmation bias.
closest, right? It's like saying, are you okay? On
Right.
repeat.
Yeah.
Like
You're good,
internally,
right? You're
right?
good,
Or
right?
yeah, or like or expressed, right? And this is like a way it's kind of outsourcing emotional regulation to your partner.
Mm.
Is what that's like. Over explaining things, over explaining every
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
Right.
Mansplaining.
So yeah, or building a legal case for every choice instead of just making one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting. And this all and it even goes a little bit deeper here. This like looking for that approval, it enslaves your mood, for
Yeah.
other people's attention, especially in your most significant relationships.
Yeah.
Which is if she's warm, she's this, like, you're great if she's, responding a certain way, if she's quiet, maybe you're spiraling or something like that, and it really ultimately, it erodes attraction over time, instead of standing in your power and being who you are and giving less of an F, about what people are thinking, and here's also with your kids, right? You have like the Disney dad trap, always trying buying approval instead of earning respect,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Avoiding discipline, to be the cool dad,
Yeah.
and in this case, I mean, the research shows that, kids feel unsafe without limits, and they also begin to lose respect,
Yeah.
for their parents or for their dad, who won't hold them accountable.
Huge
And,
problem.
and then you're also, because the kids are so incredibly impressionable, you're passing
Yeah.
it down. You're passing down this approval seeking, behavior, inadvertently, and you're teaching your children to be, and like no more Mr. Nice Guy kind of people. And then last piece here is what it looks like in your community, in your world, conforming to groups norms out of fear. Again, like, don't want to seem, raise any kind of to be that tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
So never being the guy that disagrees, like, and always being, never being the guy with an edge or just even
Yes,
an
man.
opinion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Status signaling, right? So instead of just like being real, being authentic, being who you are, you're status seeking. So you're
Yeah.
dropping achievements into conversations
Name
or
droppers.
whatever, name
Yeah.
droppers are right. Not to connect, but to secure rank,
Yep.
which is just another way of being insecure. Volunteering for resentment. So taking on burdens in social groups,
Yeah.
to keep the peace, when you're
Yeah.
quietly seething.
Yeah.
And this is the really deep layer here that I really enjoyed discovering. Most men aren't performing for the whole world. They're performing for one or two specific people.
Yep.
Usually someone from their past. It could be a father, an
Mm.
ex-coach,
Yep.
an ex-wife or something like that. Or it could just go deeper. It could be like a girlfriend when you're 18, 19 years old,
Yeah.
and and you're performing for that person for decades, even if
Right.
that person is dead, gone, or never cared in the first place,
Yeah.
and you're chasing approval from a ghost.
Well, I mean, before we get to the ghost, I mean, you addressed a lot of other things, and I
Yeah,
definitely, I definitely have
go
a
for it.
ghost. I mean, I've got multiple ghosts, but the piece that okay, so you talked about, let me see if I get this all right. So at work, in relationships, with kids, community, and then the ghost. Okay, so yeah, you mentioned one of the big ones at work, right? Saying
Yeah.
yes to everything,
Yeah,
and overloading, burning out, and becoming resentful because, oh, I'm the person who's doing all the work, but now I'm not getting recognized. I would say the other side of that is playing it safe with your opinion, right? You keep the real thoughts to yourself because you don't want to be seen as an outsider. You want to offer that acceptable version. It's just the yes man that you said. And most organizations really reward the person who speaks clearly and does think independently. So it's counterintuitive, right?
it does. Yeah.
The approval seeking can actually stall your career. And I experienced that
Mm.
as an operations officer at a SEAL team. When I went to be done with that particular tour, the commanding officer said, you didn't disagree with me a whole lot. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, that's good. I didn't disagree. And he's like, well, I would have liked to have seen you question me more often. And I took that more like later on in my career. I questioned probably too much. I probably swung the other way. But then in relationships, you talked about it, right? The being Mr. Nice Guy.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
if your mood kind of depends on whether your partner seems happy with you,
I've
you
been
end
there,
up
man.
doing that, right? Asking the questions, are we okay? Are we okay? And
Yeah.
again, I've been guilty of that myself.
I've been
And
there big time.
that constant reassurance seeking, it really puts weight on the other person in the
Yeah.
relationship. And like you said,
Yeah.
that probably ends up being unattractive. And
Very
it-
unattractive. Yeah.
yeah.
Their neediness is like that's like really neediness in a lot of ways. Like you need their approval. You need to be seen. Like so many different needs that you're putting on them instead of you taking care of yourself. But sorry,
Right.
Sean. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, if you're confident or if you want to really connect better, the confidence means you're going to be fine, even if they don't approve of you. And I think that's going to make you stronger in a relationship. And that trickles down into the kids, right? Parenting as what you call it, the Disney dad, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Also been guilty of that. Still, I'm guilty of that quite regularly. If I travel, I'll come back with toys or stuffed animals, trying to buy my kids affection or trying to, I guess, in a sense, apologize for my being gone. When in actuality, and I know this as a parent, but I don't practice it normally in this regard anyway, is that kids feel safer with clear standards. And if you teach them,
exactly.
so like, what are we teaching them by doing this Disney dad role? If you teach them that love depends on like keeping
Right.
people happy, then they're going to carry that pattern into their friendships and the relationship, which brings me to my ghost. My father's still alive, but I am constantly seeking his approval. Like you said, a father, a coach, an ex. I love my coach from high school, and I still call him coach to this day. I'm definitely seeking his approval. There were girls from high school that, in my mind, they still kind of live there in my mind. Like, hey, what can I do to impress that person, even though I never talk to them anymore? So that person might not be in our lives anymore, but their voice is still running in the background. But a lot of men are not living for today, right? And that's what mindfulness is. It's living for this
Right.
moment, right? And they're still trying to win approval from a coach from 20 years ago, an ex from 20 years
Yeah.
ago, or an argument, one single argument from 20 years ago, right? And that
Yeah. Oh my God.
spotting that ghost, knowing that ghost, I believe, is often the first step
Yeah.
to
We have that.
loosening that ghost's grip on your
Yeah,
life.
totally. Yeah, we have actually. There's an exercise at the end, and I'll just double up on the ghost. It's like that's definitely my father too.
Yeah.
Like I love my dad. He's going to be 87 this year. But he's just because of the way he is, and I've accepted. It's taken me a long time to accept that. Like I mean, just as an example, like every time I call on the phone and probably I lived in New York 20 years and I'm doing all sorts of stuff here all the time. You know what I mean? It's not easy to live in the city. He still asks the same 4 questions, said in different ways, and it's just like, so I could definitely, and it's so funny when that shows up for me, or I started as I become more aware of myself, through the yoga practice, physically aware, mentally aware, breath aware, I saw myself probably like fourth, fifth year into really practicing yoga on a regular basis. Like I started to, I'm kind of like, there's a performative aspect. Like, hey,
Mm.
look at me do this pose, or
Sure.
look at my headstand, or look at this, and just wanting to be seen. And that's something also at our core,
Yeah.
wanting to be seen. I mean, it is, but it's just like, but I think if you begin to analyze, like what that really looks like, or what that, for seeing and looking, right? What that really kind of feels like. And then who's that for? Is that about you? Because I think
Yeah.
part of that seeing is just being part of the herd, right?
Yeah.
Part of the tribe, what I mean? A herd tribe, because we need that acceptance. And I think, we mentioned earlier, it does take time to kind of overcome these things just through lived experience, that's literally why it's like a maturing process.
Yeah.
But Andy, what do you got there, my brother?
No, I just kind of zoom out here hearing you guys talk. I think one of the things that's appearing in my mind is that, hey, and I just want to double down on this because there's these psychological phenomena that are kind of running in the background that make us human that aren't good or bad. They just are, they're neutral, right? I
Right,
think
right.
cognitive biases and FNE are two things that are interrelated to that too. And I think the important thing is for us to kind of understand, especially one of the core components of FNE is expectations, right?
Yeah,
And a lot of those expectations are externally driven, especially now versus being internally, like they're intrinsic versus what you're saying. So an expectation, is a belief that something's going to happen based on really two factors, right? So one of those factors is, relative experience, and the other one is credible information, or what we call in the military intelligence, right? So when those two things are high, you can have an expectation, but not everything's an expectation because when they're medium in those two areas, if you draw a graph, it's an anticipation, right? Which you can still operate off of. And then when they get even lower, it's an assumption, which is sometimes you got to operate off assumptions and make decisions off of that. But then there's hope. Hope isn't, a strategy, but it's a very powerful thing. So I think it's getting very clear as far as what your expectations are of yourself and how that extrapolate on expectations of others, because we all have ghosts. We all have a spectrum of FNE and biases that are related to that in terms that it shape how we think and how we respond. I think the important thing is becoming aware of what those are, right? And getting very clear as far as, hey, what are the expectations that are hurting us, and what are helping us? And I think that for me, it was really about, like, the ghost I was chasing was, one, I think, is realize myself. I had really high expectations of myself. A lot of that early on was driven by my parents, like you're saying. And by the way, this is so important for men and male figures. How important is, I mean, yes, I had that with my dad too. That shapes your early worldview as a man. And it's not what he says, it's what he does. They're watching what you do.
Right.
And so they're watching what you do, the congruence between what you say and what you do. So if that's true, and you grow up in a place where you don't have a father figure, there's hopefully someone in your life that anybody who's watching can fill that fatherly role, and it's
Yeah,
needed.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
my wife deals with all kinds of problems, as a special ed teacher in middle school because of lack of parenting, right? And lack of
Yeah.
father figures in males' lives. So that's a call to action there. But I think having awareness of how you respond to the natural aspects of fear is really good. Getting feedback from others that are close to you,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a great point.
is really important point. There's some other measures that are out there to get objective looks at that. But the quicker you become aware as best you can as far as where you sit on that FNE spectrum and what's running behind the background, the more likely you're going to be able to control it and to regulate it, especially under stress and pressure. And because that's the real test, right, of your performance and your resilience and your ability to be able to be your best self, right?
Yeah, yeah, very true, very true. Well, let's drop into this like final like kind of the resolution here, like what we can actually kind of do. And we talked about a bunch of things already.
Yeah.
And I think we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I'm just going to talk about this big reframe. And it's like and this is where we get into trouble. It's where a lot of men can get into trouble. Men without a clear sense of internal purpose are the most vulnerable for needing external approval, which is like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of hits home a lot. And actually, we'll tease it right now. It's like John and I are we're gonna develop a course around finding purpose.
Yeah.
Because of all the problems that it creates if you don't have purpose, right? And we talked about big purpose and little, big P purpose, little P purpose before, but I just want to kind of tease that and maybe that's something that finding your purpose is just kind of getting on with your life a little bit that's meaningful to you can really help you to release some of this, the FNE that we talked about. John, you good?
Yeah. I mean, you talked about our developing a course about that, but we've also got it built into a course that's about to come out here in just a few weeks, our awareness to action course.
Yeah, that's a
We
great
actually
place
have
to
a
start,
module.
right? Fuck
We have a module about your purpose and being in alignment with your purpose and your values. And
Yes.
when like you said, Will, when a man or a person doesn't have a clear purpose, it leaves a hole,
Yeah.
and approval starts filling that hole, right? Or the
Right.
seeking approval starts filling that hole. And if you don't know what you're aiming at, which is your purpose, then other people's
Right.
approval, their reactions, that's going to become your proverbial compass, right? It's going to help.
Yeah, your meaning.
It's going
Right,
to guide
yeah.
you, right?
Yeah.
But if you get clearer on your values, like what truly matters to you, what you're willing to trade, that approval starts to matter less, and you stop asking, what is Joe Schmuckatelli over here going to think? What is Mary going to think about this? What you stop asking what people will think, and you start asking yourself, does this match my purpose, my ideals,
What's my true
values?
north, right?
Yeah. Does it match what I'm trying to be?
Right.
And the prison that most men live in, it's really, the walls are built from these imaginary judges, right? Again, most
Yeah,
people
no
aren't,
shit.
they're not noticing you as much as you think, but
Yep.
you are
Right.
building those walls
Yeah.
based
Yep.
on what you think they think, right?
Yeah.
What is it? People say it's not what you think of me. It's what I think you think of me, right? That's
Yep.
that's what affects you. So,
Yep.
all right.
Yeah. Well, no, I think like that's one thing, two things I want to say with that. It's like, if you don't have meaning and purpose, right? Validation, right, becomes the substitute for that.
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
And that
Yeah.
could you could build a whole life on that, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of touched on there, John, like one of the first tools that we have here is doing a values audit. Like, so getting clear of like what is meaningful to you. So, and then you can ask, like, once you analyze your life, you can analyze it just by asking this particular question, right?
Yep.
Am I acting here because it matters to me or because of how it looks?
Right.
Right. Big key question there. So I'll do another tool, and then Andy, please jump in. Another one is like doing a spotlight effect experiment.
Yep.
Do something slightly bold, right, or unconventional in a low stakes setting, right, and then check. Like, did anyone actually notice? Like, does anyone even give a crap? And this is just a great way of, again, it's like getting out of your head and experience things in the world. I think you'd be very underwhelmed about what it kind of looks like. And if you do this on a consistent basis, you're going to see like, hey, like the spotlight's not on me all the time, even though I might think it is because I wake up in this meat suit every day. Andy, anything? And then I got a couple
Yep.
more, and then we're gonna close. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get real tactical with one too, and this kind of relates to, real time resilience and how do you develop that next play mindset, something I teach my athletes. And this is really about the idea, okay, whether, so how do I be emotionally detached from the result, no matter what what happens, if it happens in my favor, it gets my favor. So, this is something you could do while you're performing your work, your home or whatever. And so hey, so when something happens, that's either good, bad, or indifferent, it's how do you get to neutral is the idea too. So it's not positive, it's not negative, it's neutral. This comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, which is like the third wave of CBT. And so the idea of neutral thinking really helps us be able to stay in the present moment,
Right.
accept things for they are, being able to
Right.
separate from them emotionally, and then shift to the next task in the moment, right? So it's what I call it's the acronym is BASS or BASE, depending on how you look at it, BASS. I'm not going to get into the breathe piece because you guys are talk a lot about that as well too. So the first one is breathe, right? And again, it may not be in the moment when you're engaged in an argument or a discourse, or but it may be something when you got a little micro moment in between, engagements, or hey, you're taking a break. It's like, hey, is to remember this. Breathe is be able to connect, your brain to your body to regulate your nervous system. Breathing is the number one way
Yeah.
to hit the
Yeah.
brakes on you got gas and brakes on your nervous system, and we're all gas and no brakes. Well, to hit the brakes and gain control is through the breath, right? And no, Navy SEALs did not invent breathing. Sorry, sorry, John. So, you guys,
It's
I
out
know
there
you
on the
guys
internet.
had,
It must be true.
you guys had there's a book and a movie that you guys invented breathing. I don't know, freaking, so I'm just throwing that out there. Thank you, Navy SEALs, for allowing me to breathe. But you got to breathe, okay? Number one is being able to accept what just happened, right? And then this
There
is
you go.
getting the neutral piece, right? So no matter what the result was, I have to radically kind of accept that just happened, right? With a neutral piece of self-talk. And then the next part is the S. The first S is separate it, right? Because we are not our thoughts, we are our emotions. They're running in the background. So there's a couple ways that I teach my athletes to do this. One is imagine those emotions that you're feeling: fear, anxiety, distress, disappointment, anger. Imagine they're in your hand, right? And you can actually physically look at them. When I work with kids, everybody's seen the movie Inside Out. Imagine them as
Oh,
characters
love that movie.
that you're watching through a screen, and then they're not in your head, they're outside, like you're watching a movie,
Yeah.
right? And I can name it, I can tame it, and then
Right,
I can
right.
shift, right? So once I breathe, once I accept it, once I separate it, now I can shift from being neutral to the next best step towards a small victory, which is the next play, right? So that BASS or base acronym, whatever you prefer, BASS if you like to fish, bass if you like music,
You're
or
a drummer.
I don't know, cello or whatever, the
Guitarist.
drum, whatever you prefer there too, go with it. But that is a tried and true way that I know that's based on science, that is evidence based, and so that's the time and place to be able to do it. Again,
Yeah.
in the heat of the moment, may not do it, but when you get a little bit of space, it takes just 30 seconds to do, and it's something that you can get sets and reps on. So try it out.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna have a shirt, John, because we always talk about the stop method, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna call it stop ass, right? Stop, right? We're gonna stop, take a breath, right? Observe, proceed, and then move through ass, right? Accept, right? What's the other S, Andy?
So separate and shift.
Separate, right? And then shift. There we go.
Yeah, there you
Stop
go.
ass.
It's not
Stop
bass,
ass.
man. It's bass.
Well, no, but we already said B, John. We already said, the B, the take a breath
Take a
is part
breath.
of it. So stop
Yeah.
ass. We're
Stop
starting our
ass.
own thing, dude. Stop ass.
I love it,
We'll
man.
make sure it's
Got it.
pronounced. We'll make sure it's pronounced stopus.
Stop it.
Stop.
So
I
it
think
doesn't
stop
affect
ass,
it.
okay? It's an acronym. You know what I'm saying? Don't
Stop
take it
being
so
an ass.
serious, everyone. Yeah, stop ass.
Stop being an ass. I mean, that's great. That's awesome, right? It's kind of like self-talk right there. Stop
Yeah,
being
exactly.
an ass.
Stop ass.
I say
Oh,
that to
shit.
myself
Yeah.
all the time. Stop being an asshole.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's John.
W-
That's John. I'm on a text thread.
Uh-huh.
Stop being an asshole. All right.
That's
Same.
a great, yeah, sir. That's a great acronym, Andy. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
For sure. That's something that's very, very valuable. I'm just gonna mention a couple more things here, and what we'll do is I'm actually gonna have our producer put these resolutions or the ways in the show notes, so you can just kind of look at those as well. I think it'd be a good call. So now here we go. So we're gonna name your ghost to be very helpful, and write that ghost, and like maybe that's a great way to again like accept that you have a ghost, right? And then move through the rest of the what you got to do, right? And I think another thing here I mentioned earlier is voluntary discomfort training, right? Cold plunging, putting yourself like on, we have Dr. T is doing improv, or comedy. Like, my God, you talk about getting
Dr.
over
T
the
does all
fear.
kinds of crazy shit.
She
Not
does.
just improv. Pillow fighting, pulling trains.
You become like more badass when you put your courage out there, and you're not afraid of being embarrassed, and you realize like, you know what, like, I feel embarrassed, I feel horrible, but you know what, I'm still here, I'm still surviving. So so that's what we got, guys. Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll
yeah.
just say a couple of last things. You
Yeah.
know, Will, we've talked about authenticity being the thing that vibrates, the emotion, the attribute
Yeah.
that vibrates at the highest level and is most well received. You know, when you stop chasing approval, then you start living authentically, and at that point, people see the true you, and they can trust you for who you are.
Right.
I mean,
Very
and
true.
people can tell, man. People can tell when you are
Exactly.
performing and when you're not performing.
Yeah.
So
Very
I
true.
think that's it truly, if you want to be accepted for who you are, be authentic. And
Yeah.
then your attributes are going to start resonating with the people that you want to impress.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think, John, one thing you mentioned, that if you really want to be a good, authentic friend, when you see a friend being performative or being too big, and they really have a close relationship, that's a place to step in. I don't know. I mean, that's something that could really enhance your relationship, right? And raise the level of your relationship and how your friends are showing up in the world, and you got to be that guy. Put yourself, that's super uncomfortable. That might be, if you got to be nimble as far, maybe that you shouldn't be part of that tribe. If you're going to be, what do you say, that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and if a bunch of your friends are very
Average.
performative and average, and you're the average, right? Or average people, like just caring so much of what other people think.
Yeah.
You might want to trade up,
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
sorry, I said the last thing would be the last thing, but now
No,
this
no,
is
no,
the
it's
last
okay,
thing
John.
that I'll say anyway.
Yeah.
We talked about the spotlight, right? And that audience that you're afraid of, it really mostly doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, very true.
And everybody else is worrying about their own spotlight. And when you stop performing for these mostly non-existent judges, imaginary judges, that's really when you start living your life.
Yeah.
So
And that's
I'll
when you
leave it
really
there.
start getting noticed too.
Yeah,
You know
true.
what I mean?
Funny
You
enough.
really do, because you come back to authenticity again.
Humor is so important. Like, I think for me, like the way I just love, I mean, you can't go wrong with like making fun of yourself. I love self-deprecating humor. There is like a limit to that too, right? But I think when you're able to like not take life too so seriously, and you're willing to poke fun at yourself, I mean, it just helps kind of like not only calm your nervous system, but it helps you just kind of show up in a way that's curious, humble, and open, and is about fun. And for me, that humor is like one of the best ways that I love to be able to do that. You guys know that about me, especially John. And I love to surround myself with people it's my love language too. Like, I love poking fun at people.
Yeah,
But like, it's hard for me to get along with people who don't like it. It's very hard nowadays, right? As people are so damn sensitive, right? But and so again, because of what we're talking about, because this FNE has such a grip on our society, and as individuals, we take some things so damn seriously, right? And so if we just loosen up a little bit, have a little fun, make fun of ourselves, then that's a good way to start.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. And every day, try to find a way to do that every day. Would be a great way to continue to exercise and just strengthen yourself on the inside. And this actually, we'll just close with this quote by Marcus Aurelius. We opened with him, right? And we'll close with him. He says, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And there it is. So, gentlemen, this has been great.
Powerful.
I mean, thanks everyone for listening. John, always a pleasure.
Can I make a shameless
Randy,
plug? Can I make
Yeah,
a
I was
shameless
going to make a shameless
Randy
plug
Riise?
for you.
please.
I was going to make one for Randy Riise.
Oh, you were okay. Cool. All right, make my.
Oh,
Yeah,
jeez.
you're gonna advertise for me. All right, sweet. All right, cool.
Well, I
Go
was
for
going
it.
to advertise real quick. Andy is out there on social media. I was going to give him an opportunity to plug his stuff, but I will plug one thing, and that's his podcast that he's wearing a hat for right there. Skull
Fuck
Sessions.
yeah, dude. Yeah.
It's been a work in progress, and it's out there. It's out there. So check out Skull Sessions on podcast. He's got a ton of good information, man. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Just trying to be like you guys. I learned from watching you guys. I appreciate you guys
Of what
being
not to
part.
do.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for making all the mistakes and allowing me to learn from
Yeah,
your
how to
guys' hard-earned mistakes. But yeah, that's what the community is all about. So we're all about the art and science of kicking ass between the ears. It's a mental fitness and leadership podcast. So we're in the same genre of self-help and trying to help people, to lead, grow, and win from within. Also, hey, check out my TED Talk if you get a chance. I'm a speaker for hire just like these guys. So if you're looking for a cheaper option, that's probably has less hair, is funnier, a little funnier. And if you don't want to hire, you can't afford these guys, then you can hit me up. So now you can check out my TED Talk.
Right.
It's
You're right.
You get what you
it's
pay for.
Fight to win the war from within. I'm the Timu. I'm the Timu of John and Will. Just remember that, all right?
Yeah. And we'll make sure we drop that into the show notes. And
Yeah, for sure.
again, laughing to the end here. So thank you.
That's right.
Appreciate you guys. Love you guys, man.
Andy, for making
All
this
right.
happen.
Doing
Yeah,
what you're
peace.
doing.
Yeah.
And John, great to see
All
you.
right, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Peace, everybody.
all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.